It began under a moonless sky, a column of armor stretching farther than the eye could see. Diesel coughed into the cold air as over 100 Russian T-90M tanks rolled forward, their hulls painted with the fresh dust of the Kupiansk front. Thermal images later revealed the truth. A $3 billion armored serpent inching through black farmland, headlights off, antennas trembling in static. Each tank worth $4.5 million, each crew believing they were unstoppable. But above that silence, someone was watching. The orbiting eyes of satellites traced the column's every move, pixel by pixel, until one operator whispered, "They're back on the move." Within minutes, across a different continent, encrypted alerts began to pulse across Ukrainian command networks. The convoy that shouldn't have existed was alive, and it had just entered the kill zone. Engines began to stir in western Ukraine. In a hangar lined with frost, a squadron of F-16s stood in shadow, their fuselages painted with digital gray. The first jet roared to life, its turbines whining past 15,000 RPM. On nearby screens, operators monitored radar feeds, cyber command uplinks, and NATO's shared airspace grid. In one synchronized breath, air, land, sea, and cyber lit up like one nervous system. Drones were launched from mobile trucks. HIMARS batteries recalibrated to new coordinates. Even the Black Sea Fleet of Ukraine adjusted its long-range sensors to block potential Russian reinforcements. At 1:42 a.m., a terse command was given. Eyes on target. Activate Phase 1. The jets accelerated down the tarmac, streaking into the night like sparks from a forge. Their afterburners painted orange arcs across the clouds. They climbed to 18,000 feet, leveled, and engaged radar silence. Each carried 2 GBU-39 precision glide bombs, $50,000 apiece, small, fast, and brutally efficient. Each with a 285-pound warhead that could penetrate a tank column with surgical precision. Down below, Ukrainian cyber teams began jamming radio frequencies in a 30-kilometer radius, while drone operators maneuvered a swarm of Punisher UAVs toward the convoy's rear guard. On digital maps, the tanks glowed as white dots, a marching constellation about to collapse. The first strike began like a whisper. At 1,500 mph, as the missiles sliced through clouds, skimming tree lines so low that branches shivered in their wake. The night turned silver for an instant as the first impact landed on the lead vehicle, an armored bridge layer. The explosion sent molten steel spiraling upward, and for a heartbeat, the entire convoy froze. The second bomb hit seconds later, cracking open a fuel truck. The resulting chain reaction spread like a firestorm. Cameras on orbiting drones captured the scene. 20,000 gallons of diesel igniting into a curtain of flame that rolled down the line. Glass shattered and fell like glittering rain. Inside the Russian command truck, radio chatter turned to panic. Coordinates were scrambled. GPS signals jammed. A voice yelled, "We are blind!" Thermal optics on their tanks fuzzed with static. The convoy commander tried to maneuver out of the corridor, but every turn led into a wall of fire. HIMARS systems joined in from 40 miles away, their rockets streaking across the sky at supersonic speed, landing with thunderclap precision. In just 7 minutes, a third of the armored vehicles were engulfed. Then came the counterstrike. Russian air defenses, positioned deeper behind the line, suddenly flickered to life. S-400 systems locked on with a sharp electronic tone. Interceptors tore into the sky at Mach 6.3, each missile worth nearly $10 million. Radar screens across Ukraine flared red, inbound threat detected. But the F-16s were already diving below the radar horizon, vanishing behind a layer of terrain masking. Russian operators fired again blindly, painting the darkness with streaks of incandescent trails. Some interceptors found decoy drones instead, detonating midair in blossoms of electric fire. Others collided with each other, leaving brief, silent spheres of static before fading into night. Far below, the shattered convoy tried to regroup. Russian artillery batteries opened up from 15 miles out, firing illumination rounds that floated down on parachutes, turning the battlefield into a glowing inferno. The light revealed what they didn't want to see: tanks without turrets, crewmen crawling from craters, the air vibrating with heat distortion. Ukrainian drones, guided by infrared, swooped back in, marking fresh targets with laser dots invisible to the human eye. The second wave came without warning. 20 Punisher UAVs, each carrying a 75-kilogram thermobaric charge, entered from the northwest. They flew low, weaving between smoke plumes, almost silent except for the faint hum of propellers. When the first one released its payload, the explosion wasn't fire, it was pressure. The air itself compressed and folded, throwing armored vehicles sideways like toys. One after another, the drones dropped their payloads with clockwork precision, walking the fire down the length of the convoy. Command tanks, ammunition trucks, mobile kitchens, all erased within minutes. Simultaneously, Ukrainian electronic warfare units deployed portable jammers, saturating the radio spectrum. Russian screens went black. Encrypted links to headquarters were severed. Engineers inserted malware through captured frequencies, freezing enemy navigation systems mid-command. "They can't call for air cover," one operator said flatly. "They're deaf."
They're deaf.
Within 20 minutes, the convoy's chain of command had disintegrated. Some crews abandoned their tanks and fled into the fields. Others fired blindly at shadows. Amid this chaos, Ukrainian intelligence teams listened in on short-range comms, desperate voices switching to analog channels. "We're surrounded." "Fuel's gone." "Command vehicle hit." The tone was fear edged with disbelief. Drone footage captured their retreat. Soldiers running beside burning machines, tracer rounds whistling over their heads. From above, the battlefield looked like a glowing scar across the black earth, each burning vehicle a wound in the landscape. And yet, the operation wasn't over. Ground reconnaissance confirmed secondary targets still intact. Recovery vehicles, mobile command posts, and artillery tractors stationed at the rear. Ukrainian command ordered a double tap. 2 jets turned back, releasing their final munitions at Mach 1.2, each strike guided by coordinates streamed directly from satellite data. The bombs fell in perfect sequence, each impact timed to the convoy's movement as though the fire were thinking. By dawn, the smoke had climbed into the stratosphere. The sound of explosions faded into the moan of cooling metal. Out of the haze came the silhouettes of Ukrainian special forces moving cautiously through the wreckage. They advanced in tight formation, rifles raised, the ground beneath them littered with shell casings and melted glass. Night vision footage later showed them pulling survivors from damaged tanks, offering water to the wounded, marking coordinates for medevac drones. The victory was undeniable, a $3.3 billion armored column reduced to wreckage in less than an hour. But in the gray light of morning, the silence felt heavier than triumph. The war had entered a new phase, one where machines fought in layers unseen and unrelenting, and where the first to blink lost everything. As the fires still licked the horizon, the Russian command scrambled to respond. Within minutes of the convoy's destruction, radar stations near Belgorod and Kursk detected faint electronic echoes, unknown signatures looping through the upper atmosphere. The assumption was clear. A second Ukrainian wave was coming. The Kremlin ordered immediate retaliation. From deep-launch silos, crews prepared the hypersonic Kh-47-2 Kinzhal missiles, each carrying a 1,000-pound warhead and flying at nearly Mach 10. Across Russian air bases, Sukhoi 35s lifted off to intercept phantom threats that didn't exist, their engines clawing at the dawn sky. The atmosphere was electric, vibrating with the anxiety of escalation. Meanwhile, Ukrainian radar systems in the north blinked alive, scanning every altitude layer. Operators hunched over consoles as new data poured in. "Incoming Sector 3!" one shouted. On their screens, 2 blips accelerated beyond any known cruise missile speed. Kinzhals confirmed. Ukrainian command didn't hesitate. Patriot batteries powered up, their canisters tilting toward the edge of the sky. What followed was a duel between centuries, the weight of steel against the speed of light. The first Kinzhal streaked downward, its heat signature like a small sun. Patriot missiles erupted upward at Mach 4, trailing white serpents of vapor. They met at 52,000 feet. The collision was violent, silent from the ground, but bright enough to turn night into dawn. Shrapnel rained across empty fields. The intercept was a success. One Kinzhal destroyed, the other malfunctioning mid-trajectory, diving nose-first into a forest. For a heartbeat, the entire war seemed to pause. In Kyiv, operators stared at the live feed, disbelieving. For months, the Kinzhal had been the ghost missile, unstoppable, uncatchable. But not tonight. The air defense commander muttered the words that rippled through every Ukrainian channel. The sky bleeds differently now, but even victory carried a shadow. Russia's retaliation was not limited to missiles. Within hours, cyber units from Kaluga and Rostov initiated a massive digital counteroffensive. Ukrainian power grids flickered. Communication lines sputtered with interference. Drone command centers went dark one after another. "They're trying to blind us," whispered a technician as his screens filled with static. It was the invisible front of war. No explosions, no sirens, just a creeping paralysis of data. But Ukraine had prepared for this. Backup nodes activated, data rerouted through encrypted NATO channels, and AI-assisted firewalls began counter-hunting Russian intrusions. Somewhere in a dim Kiev basement, a young programmer muttered as code scrolled across his monitor. "If they play with shadows, we'll fight with mirrors." By midday, the battlefield near Kupiansk was unrecognizable. Charred husks of T-90s lay scattered across open fields. The smell of burned rubber and diesel mixed with the damp soil. Ukrainian special forces wearing infrared visors moved through the wreckage. They weren't just searching for stragglers. They were securing evidence. Cameras mounted on their helmets streamed live footage, destroyed armor, spent shell casings, cracked optics. Each image would feed into a growing database of Russian losses, an unblinking ledger of destruction. Among the twisted metal, voices broke the silence. Survivors, young, disoriented, their uniforms blackened with soot, emerged from ditches with hands raised. They were treated by field medics immediately. One soldier, trembling, muttered through a translator that they had been told the road was safe. Another said their command had lost radio contact hours before the strike. The realization sank in across the Ukrainian ranks. This wasn't just a military defeat. It was a communications massacre. An entire armored division had been cut off, isolated, and dismantled by invisible hands before the first shot even landed. When Russian rescue helicopters tried to approach, they found a sky still alive with Ukrainian drones. Several K-52 alligators turned back under threat of man-pads, one succumbing to a Stinger hit that tore through its rotor at 4,000 feet. The footage circulated within minutes, a spiraling descent, a final flash, a column of smoke rising like a black candle. For Russia's command structure, it was a new kind of nightmare, technology outpacing discipline, speed overpowering strategy. Then came the unexpected escalation, the kind that changes the rhythm of a war. Intelligence from intercepted transmissions suggested Russia was preparing a counteroffensive of its own, a saturation strike aimed not at front lines, but at infrastructure, bridges, rail hubs, and energy plants. The goal was revenge, not victory. Ukrainian command, aware that the next wave could target civilian grids, issued an immediate nationwide alert. Power stations went into defensive mode. Engineers locked down transformers. Drones shifted from offense to reconnaissance, mapping air corridors for intercept paths. That night, the first Russian cruise missiles entered Ukrainian airspace. 30 in total launched from 295 bombers over the Caspian, each one worth nearly $1.5 million, carrying 1,000 pounds of high explosive. The intercept rate was astonishing. 24 shot down by NASAMS and Patriot systems. 3 crashed into empty fields. 2 hit an abandoned depot. Only 1 struck a working substation, causing brief blackouts across Poltava. Ukrainian morale didn't crack. Instead, social media filled with footage of grandmothers lighting candles, saying, "We'll wait for the light to come back." By morning, Kyiv announced the official numbers: 43 Russian tanks destroyed, 28 vehicles abandoned, and 67 prisoners taken alive. The tone wasn't triumphant, it was clinical, factual. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense described the operation as a coordinated exercise in multi-domain warfare. The language was sterile, but the implications were enormous. No longer was Ukraine simply defending. It was rewriting the rules of precision warfare under pressure. Western analysts were stunned. For years, simulations of hybrid combat had existed only in theory, where drones, cyber, and manned jets acted as a single organism. Now, those theories had bled into the real world, filmed in real time. One Pentagon official called it the first battle of the post-industrial era, where data is deadlier than dynamite. Yet amid the hum of screens and cables, there was silence too. In makeshift field hospitals, medics treated both Ukrainian and Russian wounded alike. POWs were fed, catalogued, and allowed calls home. International observers noted the contrast: precision in combat followed by restraint in aftermath. When asked why, a Ukrainian officer replied simply, "Victory means nothing if you lose your humanity." And so the reflection began. The convoy was gone, reduced to molten silhouettes on satellite maps, but what it symbolized remained. This was no longer a war of fronts. It was a war of information, of timing, of the unseen. Each strike was a message. Each silence, a warning. Machines learned faster than generals. Code replaced gunfire. The battlefield was everywhere. As dusk fell again over Kupiansk, the embers still burned faintly along the roadside. Drone cameras drifted through the haze, capturing the remnants of steel and soil, fire and frost. The narrator's voice lowered, steady, reverent, not celebratory. In the end, he said, the war did not belong to those who fired first, but to those who saw first. A pause. Wind brushed across the scorched fields, carrying a sound like distant applause. The echo of engines, of men who fought and fell under orders written by algorithms. Above them, the sky was calm again, but everyone watching knew it was only calm because both sides were reloading. The new era of warfare had arrived, silent and mathematical, where the cost of error was counted not in bodies, but in bandwidth.